Engineer Onajite sat on the sofa having mixed feelings. He loves Onome and would not want to be a barrier to her happiness. Apart from Onome being the only family he has now and the one who looks after him, she is the daughter of his beloved friend, Mr. Akpofuri, who is late, and he had promised his late friend on his dying bed that he would be a father to Onome and ensure that she stays happy. But he does not like the young man Onome is in love with, claims he makes her happy and wants to marry. The young man in question, whose name is Aniekan, is a cab driver. How can you settle for a cab driver, my dear Onome? Such a man is way below you, Engineer Onajite said to Onome. I am sure that even if your father were to be alive, he would also not support you to marry a cab driver, Engineer Onajite added. Engineer Onajite is a very wealthy man who owns a million naira construction company. Engineer Onajite was married with 3 kids. However, tragedy struck one day when his wife and his 3 teenage kids died in an auto crash. Engineer Onajite was in the car with them, but it was only him who had survived after being in a coma for 4 months. Engineer Onajite was devastated for years after the tragic loss. Engineer Onajite and Akpofuri had been friends for a long time. Their friendship began from the days they both did the Nigerian Mandatory National Youth Service. They were each other's best man on their weddings, being there for each other both in good times and in rough times over the years. Onome is Mr. Akpofuri's daughter. Unfortunately also, Onome's mother died when Onome was 13. This was some few years before Engineer Onajite lost his own family. Before Engineer Onajite's family died, Mrs. Onajite helped Mr. Akpofuri look after Onome from time to time, especially times when Mr. Akpofuri was away on business trips. So, years later when Engineer Onajite's family died, it was Onome and her father who became Engineer Onajite's closest family. And this is why Engineer Onajite considers Onome as his own daughter, especially since Onome's father also passed away the year before. Engineer Onajite thinks that Aniekan is a gold digger and that he does not love Onome as much as Onome loves him. Onome's father had left his company and properties all in Onome's name. So, Engineer Onajite has been trying to talk Onome out of the idea of marrying Aniekan. Please, uncle, Aniekan is not a bad person. I am convinced that he loves me genuinely and I love him too, Onome told Engineer Onajite. Engineer Onajite did not succeed in talking Onome out of the idea as Onome and Aniekan got married a few weeks later. Their marriage got Engineer Onajite angry, who felt that for the first time in 2 years since Onome lost her father and he became the only father in her life, Onome did not listen to him and did not take his advice. He decided he was going to frustrate Aniekan and in a way it would affect his marriage with Onome and hoped that they would get divorced as a result of it. Now, it was not only because Onome had ignored his counsel and went ahead to marry Aniekan was why Engineer Onajite resented Aniekan. And it was really not because Aniekan was a cab driver and because he thinks that he was a gold digger was why he didn't want Onome to marry Aniekan in the first place. Engineer Onajite's actual reason was because of Aniekan's tribe. Aniekan is of the Ibibio tribe in Akwa Ibom state in Nigeria, and Engineer Onajite resents everyone from Akwa Ibom. Many years ago, when Engineer Onajite was quite much younger and was only an 18-year-old boy, his father, who was a junior police officer then, was posted to work in a small town in Akwa Ibom. His father had been away from his family for a long time, so he asked them to move to Akwa Ibom with him this time. It was there, that Onajite fell in love with a young girl called Uduak, who was the same age as him. Though they were only 18 and quite young at the time, the love and bond they shared was so strong. Uduak got pregnant, and that was where the issue began. Uduak's father was a brigadier general in the army. When he learned of Uduak's pregnancy, he got angry and decided to deal with Onajite using his power and office, because he believed that his daughter was still too young to fall in love and that Onajite tricked her. He used his power and office to lock Onajite in the police cell for days, accusing him of forcefully having a carnal knowledge of his daughter. Onajite's father, who was only but a police corporal and a low-rank officer, could not help his son out of the cell. So, he reported the issue to the community head and the elders, hoping that they would intervene and plead with Uduak's father. Uduak was brought before everyone to testify and say if Onajite actually forced himself on her as her father had accused him of. To Onajite's surprise, Uduak agreed with her father's statement, stating that Onajite forcefully had carnal knowledge of her. She even lied that Onajite was not responsible for her pregnancy, but that she was already pregnant for another man, a man who she loves and whom her father wants her to marry, before Onajite forced himself on her. Right from when the issue began, from being locked up in cell and being beaten, Onajite never felt pained as much as he did then immediately Uduak said those lies and denied him. His heart ached with so much pain by her betrayal. The elders ordered that Onajite be given 100 strokes of whip, and a week later, Onajite's father received a letter stating that he had been transferred to another state, but was still demoted in rank for being a bad father with a son who is a rapist. All this was Uduak's father's handiwork. And so, from that day on, Onajite resents all the Ibibio and Akwa Ibom people he came across, including Aniekan. Now, Onajite did not stop his cab business after his marriage to Onome. I understand that you want to help me and give me a position in your company, but I am declining because I want to be able to provide the basic, at least because I am a man. So I am going to continue my business, he told his wife. Engineer Onajite began his plots to frustrate Aniekan. He hired some people and asked them to order for a ride through the taxi company app Aniekan operates under. He gave them Aniekan's cab car number and told them to specifically request for Aniekan. These people would complain and quarrel with Aniekan all through the ride. When they get to their destination, they will refuse to pay for the ride and still give Aniekan a rating of 1 star on the app, as a way to make the company think that he was a bad driver and to frustrate Aniekan, as Engineer Onajite instructed them to do. This went on for 2 weeks, frustrating Aniekan on a daily basis. Then one day, one lady, still hired by Engineer Onajite, started screaming and holding on to Aniekan's shirts. Immediately, Aniekan stopped the car at her destination, and when she alighted, the lady screamed, claiming that Aniekan attempted to rape her. People gathered, and some policemen who were not too far from the scene arrested Aniekan when they heard the woman's claim. Aniekan was in jail for 3 weeks until Onome's lawyer, who was able to prove that the lady who had accused him of rape was lying. They discovered this by reviewing the ride from the taxi app data, and it showed that throughout the ride, the car did not stop until it got to the woman's destination. How and when did Aniekan try to rape her then? Secondly, Aniekan is not using tinted glasses, and the glasses were wind down. The place the woman alighted at after the ride was a busy place, and everyone saw Aniekan remained at the driver's seat when they arrived, and it was the woman who turned around to pull him out of the car while she accused him. If all of this were the case, when did Aniekan made the attempts? They asked the woman. The woman could not answer this question, and so Aniekan was acquitted and the case dismissed, with the woman being punished by the government by asking her to do a community service. Engineer Onajite was grateful in his heart that the woman did not reveal to the police that it was him who hired her, and that was how he was able to pull some strings by bribing some corrupt police officers and some officers in the courts who only gave the woman a punishment instead of arresting her for falsely accusing Aniekan of rape. Aniekan stopped being a cab driver after Onome asked him to stop for the last time, and because of the incident with the woman who accused him of rape. He accepted to work in Onome's company as a project manager because he was also a graduate after all. Then one morning, Onome was on her way to work. This was around 10 a.m. and Aniekan had already left for work earlier than her that day. This was not the first time because Onome, being a wife, stays back at home sometimes to sort out things in the house before leaving for work later. Onome was halfway when her car was overtaken and blocked by some men. The young men in the car came out and they kidnapped Onome. They got to a hidden hideout and called Onome's husband and her uncle and requested a ransom of 30 million naira before they would release Onome. Aniekan was worried by the kidnapper's call. He does not have such an amount of money, else he would have paid the ransom for his wife's release and safety. It was Onome who has such an amount, and she was yet to make him a signatory to the company's accounts and her own personal account as she promised she would before the kidnap. Left with no option and desperate to save his wife, he approached Engineer Onajite for help, even though he is aware that Engineer Onajite does not like him. "Please sir, help me save my wife. I promise that we will pay back once Onome is out," Aniekan pleaded. But Engineer Onajite ignored him. "Please, Onome is also your daughter," he said, still pleading. But Engineer Onajite ignored him still. Meanwhile, Onome tried to negotiate with the kidnappers where she was held hostage. "I would increase the money, please, if you would let me go. I would give you 50 million instead of 30 million. That's an extra 20 million naira," she said. The kidnappers spoke to each other for a while and agreed to Onome's offer. Onome, however, requested for one more favor from them. She begged that they reveal the person who was the mastermind behind her kidnap. This is because they already had her husband and uncle's numbers and were able to call her husband and her uncle without requesting for their numbers from her. And because of this, she believed that it is someone who knew her must be the one behind her kidnap. The kidnappers hesitated for a while, and then, because of the extra money, they revealed that it was Aniekan, Onome's husband, who was the one behind the kidnap and who had sent them. Onome was disappointed but much more heartbroken to learn that Aniekan planned a kidnap. She got home and confronted Aniekan about it. Aniekan denied that he never did such, but Onome did not believe him. This resulted in a heated argument, and Onome asked Aniekan to leave her house and live her life. "I should get you arrested for kidnap, but I would just let you go. Go away from me forever, and if I ever see you around me again, I would get you arrested then," Onome said, angry and in tears as she sent Aniekan away from her. "I told you that young man was a gold digger, but you refused to listen to me," Engineer Onajite said to Onome when he heard that Aniekan was behind the kidnap. Well, months later, Engineer Onajite was involved in another ghastly motor accident. It was so bad that he laid unconscious with blood all over for a while, and people around thought he was dead. Meanwhile, Aniekan had returned to his cab business after his separation from Onome. So, on that day, He was driving when he got to the scene of the accident. He recognized Engineer Onajite and quickly carried him into his car and rushed him to the hospital. Luckily, when he got to the hospital, the doctor confirmed that Engineer Onajite was still breathing. However, he told him that his case was critical and requested an urgent blood transfusion, else Engineer Onajite might die. His blood type was O negative, a rare blood type, and was not in their blood bank at that time. The doctor told Aniekan this, and luckily, as fate would have it, Aniekan was also O negative. He offered to donate blood to Engineer Onajite. "Please, doctor, do your best to save him. He is my father-in-law," Aniekan said to the doctor. Onome learned of Engineer Onajite's accident about 2 hours later and rushed to the hospital. Though she was still angry at Aniekan, she was grateful to him when she learned that it was him who brought her uncle to the hospital and had also donated blood to save him. So, she said thank you to him softly and turned away from him and went back into the doctor's office. A week later, Engineer Onajite was fully recovered. However, the accident affected his left leg badly, so he had to remain in the hospital for the leg to properly heal. One day, a nurse was trying to change the bandage on his leg when Onome, who had come to see him, walked into the ward he was in. As the nurse changed the bandages, Onome noticed a peculiar birthmark at the upper part of Engineer Onajite's thigh. She froze because Aniekan has same exact birthmark at same exact spots. This cannot be a coincidence, Onome thought, and so, after months of being separated from Aniekan and never speaking to him except for that day in the hospital, Onome called him. Onome called because she remembered that Aniekan had mentioned to her that his biological father was from Delta State and that his biological father and his mother had separated because his grandfather had caused them to separate. Curious Onome, after seeing the birthmark, called and invited Aniekan to the hospital. Aniekan related the story his mother had told him about his biological father to Engineer Onajite, and the story tallied with Engineer Onajite's story with his first and young love, Uduak. However, the only difference was that Aniekan did not mention that it was Uduak who betrayed Onajite's love by lying to the chiefs and everyone that Onajite had raped her. And that was when Aniekan revealed that his mother told him that her father had forced her to tell the lie. Uduak's father had threatened to kill Onajite and also make Onajite's father lose his job and go to prison if she does not do as he says. And knowing how powerful and influential her father was then, she knew that he was someone who would carry out such threats. So, she chose to lie to protect Onajite from dying and not make his father lose his job. Uduak has also passed on now, so Aniekan called his auntie, who was in Ghana, to speak to Engineer Onajite right there in the hospital. She was Uduak's younger sister, and she confirmed that Uduak had told the lie to save Onajite from their father. Engineer Onajite was weakened by this revelation. He felt bad for hating Uduak and every other Akwa Ibom person all these years, when all Uduak did was that she had tried to save him. He felt even worse that he hated his own son that fate brought his way and had resulted to acting petty, doing things to ruin his marriage with Onome. He confessed to being responsible and planning the whole rape issue and also the kidnap because he hated Aniekan and wanted Onome to leave him. He begged for Aniekan's forgiveness. Aniekan forgave him without thinking twice, as he was also happy to finally meet his biological father. To officially confirm if Aniekan was truly his son, they carried out a DNA test and the result came out a 100% match. Engineer Onajite sat down quietly days later in his study, grateful to God for bringing his first son his way and happy that he wouldn't be dying as a man without an offspring. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story and that you have learned something from it. I would love to know. Please drop your comments. Thank you for listening and see you in my next video. Bye.